At the inception of Christmas, the enemy tried to stop it, and he's still trying to stop it today. And not only is he trying to stop it from a political arena, which we'll see that even more closely here, nearly 2,000 years ago, but also he tries to stop it in our own heart and life, to cause us to get discouraged. It causes us to believe the lie that Christmas is never going to occur, which Christmas is an ongoing issue in the life of a child of God. Every day, Jesus Christ is presenting himself to you to show you that he is strong and approved to meet you at your point of need. Amen? Notice this, Matthew chapter 2, it reads as follows. Are we there? Matthew 2, verse 1. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Isn't that interesting? He did not believe in him, but he still labeled him as the Christ, the Son of the living God, the Messiah, the Savior of the world, the Anointed One. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. That was a lie. Verse 9, when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshiped him. And fell down and worshiped him. And fell down and worshiped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I'm going to stop right there. So the scene is set when and where Christ was born. We know that, as we even looked at it more in more detail last week. He was born in Bethlehem. We've known that since we were children. He was born in Bethlehem. And there was a time period actually from his birth until we pick it up in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. He's approximately about 2 years old. He's between the age of 1 and 2. Because you notice that he's a young child. The Bible makes it very clear. So he's still not in the manger in Bethlehem where he was born. So at this time, he's living when he was a baby, where he was growing up, is not the same scene as Bethlehem in the manger. So we understand that a little time had elapsed, but also at the same time we discover, when you correlate with the book of Luke, from the moment he was born, that star appeared. From the moment he was born, that star appeared. And the wise men, the magi, some pronounce it, very powerful, very influential men. They were actually leaders of faraway countries. And some say that one was a king of what is now modern-day Africa. Others have surmised that it was different parts of what we would refer to as even Europe, and other parts of what we would now call the Middle East. Regardless, they all converged because they had been searching for this one who they had been reading about, because they were very learned men, and of course they had access to all books, which only rich and powerful people had access to books at that time. So not only did they have access to what we would call the Old Testament, but also they correlated just different things and realizing that, you know what, this one is to be born who will be the Son of God, and he will live among men. And he will be born in Bethlehem, as prophesied all the way back 700 years BC by the prophet Isaiah and other Old Testament prophets even. So they'd been studying that for many, many years, who knows even how long exactly. And then when that star appeared, they knew that that would be the symbol that he was actually born. So they began to traverse and follow that star for at least a year or longer. So now they come to where he was born and still looking for him to get just somewhat more detail. Now notice this, in conjunction with everything that's going on, Jesus was born, it says, in the days of Herod. So even when Christ was born in the manger in Bethlehem, and of course now, somewhat over a year later, Herod is still the king. King Herod, Herod the Tetrarch, that's another title of his. Herod Antipas, he has those given titles, which he was the son of Herod the Great. Now, this given Herod was one messed up individual. Let me just mention a few things without getting too crass about the things he delved into. I'll just leave it and suffice it to say he was a sexual deviant. The guy was sick, beyond sick, in the area of sexual activity. I'm just going to shelf that one and leave it at that, okay? But then also he was driven by rage and insecurity and great jealousy. He killed one of his sons. He killed nephews. He killed other male family members, making sure that they wouldn't try to overthrow his kingdom and overthrow him as he sat upon the throne. That was the vicious, vile man he was, to kill his own son and to kill his own nephews and family members to make sure they would not try to overthrow his kingdom and his throne. Power hungry, to say the least. He cared nothing about the people. He ruled with an iron fist. He was given to extravagance in every area, extravagance and great violence. I don't know if you ever heard this old school term. I heard it from the time I was a child. And maybe you've never heard this, but you would hear, and I would hear older people say this. Yeah, that person out-Heroded Herod. I don't know if have you ever heard that statement? Yeah, they out-Heroded Herod. Or they out-Herod Herod. Either way, I would hear that growing up. I never really knew fully what it meant. And it always came typically from people who were Christians, elderly people who were Christians. And so as I grew older and I dug into that phrase a little bit more, it just simply meant that someone who was given to extravagance, someone who was given to great anger, bursts of anger, someone who had a vile temper, someone who was driven by rage and jealousy and envy, and also someone who just had unbelievable sexual prowess and in a very, very unbelievable, demented way. So that's what that meant when people would say that person out-Heroded Herod is that, they're an individual you don't want to be around. Bottom line, you do not want to be in their life and make sure they're not in yours. So there again, this guy is despicable. He's a murderer, doesn't care about people, taxed them heavily, and when they complain, he taxed them even more heavily, anything to secure and try to boost up his own empire. So now, out of the clear blue, these very powerful, influential, wealthy men, leaders of other nations, converge, and they say, listen, we are looking for this one which it has been written about him, who is the Son of the living God, who is the Christ, the Son of God, the Anointed One. We understand the word Christ, the Greek form is the word Anointed One, the Anointed One or Anointed. The Hebrew word is Messiah, same word, which Messiah means the same thing, Anointed or Anointed One, which that's the title given to the Son of God. We call him Christ, we call him Messiah. See, there were a lot of people called Jesus in that day, but there's only one Christ. Yeah. And even to this day, there are a lot of people in the world called Jesus, but there's only one Christ. Amen? So isn't it interesting? They told Herod that we've come to worship Christ. We've come to worship the King of all kings. Now, right then and there, that set Herod off. He wants to kill him. He wants to kill anyone who's trying to, in his mind, overthrow his throne or who would be king above him. Can't live with that. So he asks where he is, and when you find him, I want to know where he is so I can go and worship him too. Now, I'm going to show you the end result here. So we know that, so after they worshiped him, we see verse 12, then they were warned. So after they worshiped Christ, we're familiar with this. We'll come back to this. They present unto him, they give unto him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Verse 12, then they are warned in a dream. So after they spent time with Christ, worshiping him, giving him gifts, treasures out of their own heart and their own life, then that given night they were warned in a dream, and they were told, do not go to Herod, but go another way. Then you pick up this narrative. You drop down in verse 16, because after the wise men, the Magi, were warned, then even Joseph was warned in a dream, saying, you need to get out of here, you need to flee into Egypt, and you live there until I say you can return. So now you notice this in verse 16. So simultaneously, we get into verse 16 when Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men. So a few days later, when he found out, they didn't come back. They went and worshiped this one who is, in Herod's mind, supposedly King of Kings and King of the Jews, and of course, King of all kings, that they didn't come back as I told them to do. So he, of course, became extremely angry. Now notice what happens. When he was deceived by the wise men, he was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Because there again, the wise men said, well, we've been traveling for nearly 2 years. So needless to say, he just used that as a calendar. And he sent soldiers out throughout all of Bethlehem. I know we just read this, but I just want to make this narrative really clear. He sent soldiers out with swords to go throughout all of Bethlehem and all the surrounding districts. We would call them suburbs. All the surrounding area, and go to every single house. And every house that has a male child, a baby boy, 2 years of age and younger, slaughter it then and there. So you continue to read, which we won't now though, but you continue to read, and it goes on to say, now all this was fulfilled, which Jeremiah even prophesied about. So when you read the book of Lamentations, Jeremiah prophesied that this would actually come to pass. So this is the fulfillment of that. I wanted to take us there just for a moment so we can understand to the degree that Satan goes to use people to try to stop Christmas, to try to steal, kill, and destroy Christmas. He will go to no lengths and no reservation to try to wipe out any memory, any connection, or any semblance of Christmas. When you study, as I am, I love world history. And there are certain things I always look for when I study world history. One of them is this. Where was Christianity placed at that time, especially in given countries? Was it oppressed? Were Christians persecuted? Was it legal or illegal to read the Bible during those days and times? So when you begin to study world history and you find pockets of given nations on how they treated Christians and how they treated even the celebration of Christmas. I'm not saying it had to be commercialized. I'm just saying when they would totally outlaw it. Don't ever even mention the birth of Christ. You can never, ever even congregate together and worship Him, because if you do, it'll cost you your life. So, throughout the eons of time, Satan has tried to stop and destroy Christmas. But, somebody say but. I've been waiting to get to this part. In the midst of over 2,000 years, in the midst of every kind of persecution, adversity, and even the slaughter of millions and millions and millions of Christians, which a lot of people focus on Hitler, exterminating so many Jews, which he did. He also exterminated Christians too. Joseph Stalin, who murdered and just completely committed genocide for decades, killed, it's commonly accepted, over 3 times the people that Hitler killed. Most of the people that Stalin was killing were Christians because he knew that there's no way you can implement and build a communist empire with people who are free internally. So he tried to wipe out and commit genocide to even all Christians, millions and millions and millions toward them. The bottom line is this: with all the heinous acts throughout the history of the world and nations since the birth of Christ, Christmas cannot be stopped. Amen. Regardless. Oh, everyone ought to put their hands together for that. So now we're going to look at this, how it relates to you, how it relates to your family, how it relates to your everyday life. And of course, not just this Christmas day that's coming upon us for 8 days away. And not just this Christmas season, which of course it should be heightened in our life. And that's why I like to accentuate these scriptures, is because from the outset, the enemy tried to stop Christmas. He tried to kill it and kill it off. It happens figuratively, metaphorically, spiritually speaking, if you will. Throughout our given life in a given year, the enemy is always trying to kill off the Christ within us. By discouraging us, by dissuading us, by getting us off focus, off track, by trying to steal our faith, trying to steal our joy, trying to get us to believe the lie that things aren't going to work out, that things aren't going to get better, that things aren't going to turn around. That's how the enemy comes and tries to stop Christmas coming into your life. Because every time someone gets born again, Christmas just occurred. Amen. Every time a Christian receives an answer to his or her prayer, Christmas just arrived. Every time a miracle happens in someone's life, Christmas just became a present help in someone's life. Every time someone gets delivered, set free, something good happens in someone's life, it's Merry Christmas, even though that may be July 28th. Because the point of the matter is, when Christ came into this world, and since the time he was born into this world, Christmas cannot be stopped. Every day of your life, the enemy is trying to steal, kill, and destroy. He's trying to stop what God has already predestined in your life. The only one that can stop it is you. Satan himself and all of his minions of helpers cannot stop what God has predestined to occur with the presentation of Christ in your life. There are healings that are going to occur in your life that the devil cannot stop. Miracles are going to occur in your life that the devil cannot stop. Deliverances are going to occur in your life, your children's life, family members' life. Unsaved family members are going to get born again. Christmas is coming into their life, and it cannot be stopped.
For more information about our teaching resources, visit our website at ciclive.com.